welcome to episode 24. Today, Joe and I are going to do a book review and a movie review on Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen, I believe.
Yes. Um, it's been a work in progress. Both of us reading and watching the movie.
Yeah,
So bear with us. Um, yeah, we could just get into our three things.
sounds good. Yeah, what are your three things?
Okay. So my three things, I would say the first thing would be YouTube.
Nice.
I've been watching a lot of YouTube lately, like on how-to stuff, especially with like coding, programming, and developing because I've really sparked my interest over the spring break because I haven't had the opportunity or time to really enjoy learning about what my career is going to be like
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so busy working on like my general studies. So yeah, I love YouTube. The second thing would be the Nivea soft hydrating cream. It's probably not really good for me, but it moisturizes my face very well and it comes with a lot of product and it'll last me forever. So it's affordable also, so I really like it. And then the third thing I would say might got to be hairspray or the freeze hairspray
Oh, yeah,
because my hair it's like a bob length and my hair gets greasy really fast. So I try to use hairspray to pull my hair up in a small low bun and it works out. I'll have like flyaways here and there, but it's not where it looks crazy, so it works. I like it.
that's what matters the most.
Um, yeah, so we will get into this. I guess we can rate our book and then our movie reviews out of five. So
Let's see. What would you rate the book?
I would say I give a lot of books too high of a rating, so I'm gonna like be for real. And I'm gonna be honest, I only read like half of it, maybe a little bit more than half. But I thought my Kindle said my Kindle app on my phone was telling me I was on this page or whatever. But I'm pretty sure on my actual Kindle, um, I'm on like a page 100 or something. So I was like, maybe it didn't update right. Um, but yeah, overall, I would rate this like either a 3.5 or 4-star read because I really liked her style of reading and like her perspective of everything is very interesting in the idea that this wasn't like someone writing about her experience, it was personally her and it's like an eye-opening moment for like outside readers like us that like the people in that institution were genuinely broken, but that didn't mean that they were bad people.
For sure. That's a good way to put
And
it.
she was struggling too, but I think it was in a different way. Like everybody kind of envied her because she wasn't as quote unquote crazy.
Hmm. And for those of you who have never read the book or you're just like interested about it, here's like a quick little synopsis. So it was kind of set in the 1960s. The main character who wrote it obviously is Susanna, and she was taken to a hospital after meeting with like a psychiatrist or a doctor. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and this book kind of talks about like psych wards and her time in the hospital as a young teen girl and other girls she met along the way. It provides insight to her peers at the time and delves into mental illnesses and recoveries. and just kind of like a young girl trying to find her place in the world.
Yeah, and I remember she wanted to actually do better in her school. I mean, not school, her hospital. And so she'd have these sessions with probably a therapist, psychiatrist, whatever it was. And they would ask her, "What do you want to do in life?" And she said she wants to write. But I felt like maybe she thought writing isn't like a good enough job. Like, where is that going to take me?
Hmm.
But I mean, look at her now. So,
Yeah, honestly, which is cool to see. I also gave the book like 4 to 5 stars. I thought it was like really good, like a quick read. And if you're kind of more into like psychological books or like mental health awareness books, I think this is the one for you. It's very interesting. Like we said, I think it's only like 100 and something pages, like less than 200, right?
yeah, it was around, I think of like the reading material itself, it was like around 146, something like that.
Yeah, so like a shorter book for sure if you're not like wanting to dive into something that's like massive.
Yeah, and like honestly, if you wanted to, you could probably just pick random chapters and like read about that story and then go to another random one.
Oh yeah, that
You
is
might
true.
have like, oh, but I'm a little confused here and there. Because then she also talks about like how all the patients are supervised by the nurses, like the one-on-ones or the two-on-ones.
Yeah,
So that might get a little confusing. So I would read at least the beginning to kind of get a
like learn about
decent wrap around.
for sure. I think that is yeah, like you definitely can skip around because this book, we were kind of saying it doesn't really have a definite plot, but it's still good to read, like, from the beginning just to get a good idea of who she's talking about, who the other people are. And in this book, it just really will allow you to relate to some of the stories in a way. And just because it's like her personal experiences and it's not kind of like fiction, like this is real world stuff, which is what I liked. It was like raw and she really just delivered, honestly. Like it was very interesting to see. About the movie, what would you rate the movie?
Movie, I would give that a 5 out of 5. I
Me
think
too.
it took me like in my lifetime, it took me probably like 3 tries to actually watch the entire movie because the beginning part was so boring for me. Um, like I would all, but I think it was a situation when I tried to watch the movies, I was like dead tired in my bed, like halfway asleep, and then I would fall asleep during the movie.
Yeah,
So I feel like I have to blame myself for that. But when I actually finally watched the rest of the movie, I think it was just like an interesting experience. Like I don't really watch um like institutional history, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or like it'll be like not realistic in a TV show, like oh all these like the Looney Town or whatever. Like it's just not realistic. But this one I feel like because she's trying to capture everything that happened during her stay at McLean Hospital, it makes it some type of artifacts in like books in
I
general of
agree.
what it's like to be in a institution like they were.
Yeah, something that I made note of was it kind of showed the human side to mental illness and not just like stats and data from like a doctor or something. And I think
Right.
that not like saying it's relatable in a sense, but it just made it feel more real, more vulnerable, more emotional, which was like really nice to see it from a different light, not just like, oh, 70% of women, like 20, like all of that
Yeah.
kind of spew. So that's why I loved it. Angelina Jolie as Lisa. She killed it. She delivered. She was amazing.
She was like the perfect character because I can't think of anybody who could pull that off.
Oh no. No, she killed it.
And like the lengths that she went to kind of have Susanna under her wing in a way, like kind of
Hmm.
like in a manipulative way, but also in like a friendly way, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of shows like, wow, Lisa's like really lonely because people who make that kind of effort, like, I don't think they're genuinely bad people. They just do whatever it takes and they end up hurting people, but they feel like they're putting themselves first, so they like validate it. Like, oh, this is for me, so it's okay if they get hurt.
Hmm. Which is like kind of tough. And something I also made note of when I was like watching the movie and reading the book was like it just kind of made me question like what is better, self-awareness or going into things blindly? Because in that case, like if you're so self-aware that you know like you're hurt inside and that you're doing this to manipulate other people, or you could just go in things blindly and just take it like one day at a time. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you were saying, it's just kind of like she was a little manipulative. Obviously, like still viewed her as a friend, right? But it was just interesting to see that dynamic and just how that kind of plays a role with self-awareness or relationships or just like young women who are hurting inside and like how to deal with that and what treatments are there to get better. Does that really help? Just it really just I think the best word to like describe it was vulnerability. Like it was amazing and it really captured that.
I think, like you were saying, her vulnerability was not really showing because, back in the 60s, we can't like identify what people are going through as well because the studies on like the human mind and mental illness and such wasn't very a big thing, but now that we know more about it in this year, it's like easily identifiable. Like if like like you might have an opposite reaction, but like by your facial expression or your body language, you can tell someone's not okay. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We can like identify that. But back then, because that wasn't as easy, um, whenever Lisa was like acting out, Susanna was able to like identify like she wasn't okay or
Yeah.
like and like towards the end of the movie or the end of the book, Susanna really like took or like captured her attention, Lisa's attention, like, oh, how do you know this about me?
Hmm.
When she, I don't know how to describe it, but like basically Susanna told Lisa everything that's wrong about her because Lisa was just like, she knew all that stuff, but she didn't want to face the truth. She
Yeah.
didn't want to get the help. She was just like, I'm gonna do whatever I want.
Hmm.
And that never helped her in her case. But now, after Susanna has captured Lisa's attention to actually face what's wrong with her and try to fix herself, become a better version of her, Lisa, maybe like things would turn out better. Because Susanna's basically saying, like, I'm gonna try and get the help I need, so
Hmm.
you should too.
Which is very cool. And I think like we all should know that there's somebody out there and like trigger warning as well, because I know this is all like sensitive topics and it's like hard to like think about it and it made me sad, but I know at the end of the book she was telling how she saw Lisa, like ran into her years later, and she had her kid and like was just basically just like transformed and was like, yeah, like just like I have a new perspective, like I'm doing well, just like thinking of the old days. And it's very interesting because back then there's also those like weird gender divisions and like all of that wasn't really a thing. Like it was just like taboo topics, I guess. And
Yeah.
it's really hard. I can't imagine being a young woman at the time who was dealing with these issues internally and acting out externally, like how hard that must have been to really control, or you're just told from male doctors like all the time how you're feeling or how you're supposed to feel, which is kind of wrong because we all think a little bit differently, no matter what gender we identify as, no matter who we are, you know?
Right. And I feel like the parents, like Susanna's parents, they're like very like traditional 60s parents.
Yeah.
Like, gotta look good for everybody. I'm only worried about the reputation, don't care about my child's mental health. And you know how she was trying to like down the bottle of aspirin? I
Yeah.
feel like that was like her creative like expression in a way, like to tell her parents like I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And she's been trying like I don't think she's been trying to tell her parents necessarily, but
She was just kind of at
like
her breaking point.
yeah, 'cause the situation where you know that Susanna's parents' friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was that one guy that was trying to like a whole like adult man trying to like do stuff with Susanna because they had before, but
Yeah.
she didn't know that he was married and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that situation also put her in a bind mentally because first of all, when an adult man is trying to convince like a teen or not as developed woman or girl, I should say, it's manipulating because they don't know any better, especially back then. They just
Yeah.
say yes because they're afraid to say no.
Mm-hmm. And like I'm glad times have changed because consent is so important and like awareness of that because like you said, like she didn't know any better and trigger warning for sure. Like she was definitely like a victim of that. And you know, that really shapes how you think, how you feel mentally, like for years to come, you know?
Yeah. I just I think it just also shows how times have changed, that this book still exists after so many years. I don't know exactly when it was published, but do you know when?
I don't know. I'll have to
I
look it
feel
up.
like it would have been much later in her years, but it's also good how far we have come to like acknowledge the efforts as humans that we've put in to get to know more about how our brain works.
For sure. Also, it was originally published 1993.
1993. Yeah, so like 26 years ago.
Yeah. Oh,
Wait, no,
also,
more
um,
than that.
definitely and another like trigger warning, Daisy, that character, that was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, that really messed me up
And not just
because
character, person.
Daisy's the one with the chicken, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Made me so sad.
That one was really rough because I don't know how she got out of that institution. Like, I know how, but I don't understand how the nurses there or the like director there didn't think to like really learn more about her.
Yeah.
Because even when she was leaving, her state was still really frigid, in my opinion. And I know like they don't really have a say because if, you know, a parent goes and signs papers to release you, there's really nothing you can do. You're released.
Yeah.
I guess you could sign yourself back in though, but obviously she didn't want to do that because
Yeah.
she thinks
Yeah.
she's normal and she wants to pretend she's normal. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but you know, what happens to her is just a sad story.
It is so sad. And like it just makes me think of how times have changed, like you said, and I'm glad to be more progressive in this and people like not thinking mental illness is such a taboo subject and really, really talking about it for all genders, for all people, which is like so beautiful. But my heart goes out to like individuals who had experienced that and how the doctors might not have had all the tools they needed back then to give her the help she needed because she did not deserve that.
No. And honestly, like we were saying much earlier in this episode about Lisa kind of doing things blindly and manipulating people, Lisa has a lot to do with how Daisy reacts in the story. Because it's like her breaking point. She knew all the things that Lisa was gonna confront Daisy about,
Yeah,
but she didn't need to hear it, you know? Like, she was released, she had her own place, she was trying to make it, in life.
exactly.
And for Lisa to, like, rub certain things in to, like, rub salt in her wound, basically, was just basically, like, contradicting her institutionalization in the first place. Like she was trying to get better, but
Yeah.
like Lisa like re-acknowledged to her like you're not better. You're never gonna get better.
And it's hard. And I feel this really is eye-opening to kind of like what happens to behind the scenes to people who are going through tough times. And it's almost like they were, I think, I don't know if this was the exact line, but something about kind of feeling like alienated. And I don't, and it sucks because it's like they are still people, they are humans, they are dealing with
Yeah.
these like issues and all this and being vulnerable and like not knowing how to navigate life because, how do you deal with something like that mentally affects you so hard without the help of other people? And it's just really tough when the doctors or the nurses don't treat you as good, or they're just like, oh, I'm going to give you a pill. Like, great, check. Oh, pill check, not really checking in on them like seriously. So that's like, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is making sense either. It just, it definitely hits heavy. And I hope, like, if any of you are struggling, like, like, there's people out there for you. And there's a lot of better options of how to deal with like recoveries and how to navigate mental illnesses and everything compared to back then in the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I wonder if, because I know there's probably thought about this, like you said towards the end of the book, Susanna writes that she met Lisa and she's all better with the child and everything. I wonder if she ever like thinks about Daisy and like what she said and what happened to her, or
I'm
has
sure
she
she
like
does.
repressed those memories? Because,
I mean, who knows? It's kind of like, right, no
right,
human is wanting to know what they did bad, right? Nobody wants to know what they're doing bad or being told or being reminded of those memories. But I think like she did have a kid, so maybe, and I don't really know. I'm not a parent. I don't want kids personally, but like from another perspective, she wants to be better and kind of forget those times or who she was and be like transform herself into a new like whole person to be better for her family, her kid.
right,
I don't know.
yeah,
Anything else that you want to add?
that's pretty much all. I think you should definitely try reading and watching the movie together
Yeah.
because the movie does a pretty good job, in my opinion. I think the characters are spot on. Um, like I said, I can't speak for the entire book. I read most, but you know, um, it's a good experience if you're into like true stories. Because
Yeah,
this is
more
like it's
memoir.
like it has a lot of drama in it for being realistic, you know? Like it's not something that would happen every day, but for them it does. So I think it's
Yeah.
something you might want to read into.
Of course, definitely recommend. It was a really good read, and super interesting and insightful. So yeah, we
Yeah.
hope you guys enjoyed this episode and doing kind of like a movie and book review, which was
This
fun.
was fun.
But it's definitely like a heavier topic and a heavier book. I think that weighs down, not just like, the Spanish love deception where we're like, ooh, like giggling over freaking Aaron. But I think it's nice to have some diversity with the books you read and be able to learn stuff like this if you're into that, like, this genre. So hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.